Listen to me for 10 seconds, because this might sting. When someone ignores you, they are answering you. Silence is not confusion. Silence is information. And the longer you pretend it isn't, the more of yourself you abandon. I want you to notice what happens inside your body when someone pulls away. Your chest tightens. Your thoughts race. You replay conversations. You soften your needs. You shrink your voice. You start negotiating with your worth like it's something fragile that might break if you ask for too much. And here's the hard truth we don't like to say out loud. Ignoring is a form of power. It keeps you waiting. It keeps you guessing. It keeps you bending. But I need you to hear this clearly, because this is where self-respect begins. When someone ignores you, they are showing you the limits of their capacity, not the limits of your value. You don't chase clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. You don't earn love by tolerating neglect, and you don't heal by staying emotionally available to someone who refuses to meet you. Choosing yourself doesn't start with confidence. It starts with grief. Grief for the version of them you hope would show up. Grief for the connection you imagined. Grief for the energy you poured into a silence that never poured back. And here's the shift: quiet, uncomfortable, and powerful. Instead of asking, why are they ignoring me? You ask, why am I still offering access? That question changes everything. Let me tell you what ignoring really does. It doesn't just hurt your feelings. It rewires your nervous system. You start living on edge. You flinch at notifications. You overanalyze pauses. You become hyper alert, not because you're dramatic, but because your body is trying to survive emotional unpredictability. And here's the part no one says gently enough: being ignored teaches you to self-abandon. You stop asking for what you need because it feels dangerous. You delay hard conversations because silence feels safer than rejection. You convince yourself that being understanding is the same thing as being loved. But understanding without reciprocity is not maturity, it's erosion. When someone ignores you repeatedly, your body keeps score. It remembers every unanswered message, every half response, every moment you swallowed your truth just to keep the peace. And over time, you don't just feel unseen, you feel replaceable. That's why choosing yourself feels terrifying at first, because it means walking away from hope. It means admitting that effort isn't being matched. It means saying, I deserve emotional consistency even if it costs you the connection. And listen, this is important. People who value you don't make you guess where you stand. They don't use distance as a test. They don't confuse love with absence. Choosing yourself in this moment doesn't require a dramatic exit. It requires one quiet, radical decision. You stop chasing emotional availability from someone who has already shown you their limits. That's not bitterness. That's bravery. Here's what hurts the most about being ignored. It makes you doubt your own reality. You start asking yourself, am I asking for too much? Am I being sensitive? Maybe I should just be more patient. And that's the damage, not the silence itself, but what it convinces you to do to yourself. Because when someone ignores you and you stay, you slowly learn to betray your own instincts. You feel the ache in your chest, the tightness in your throat, the exhaustion in your bones, and then you override it. You tell yourself to calm down, to be smaller, to not make waves. But your discomfort is not a flaw. It's data. Your body knows when something isn't safe, even when your mind is still negotiating. It knows when you're being emotionally sidelined. When connection is conditional, when love comes with a waiting room, and I want you to hear this clearly, silence that hurts you is not neutral. If someone can disappear without explanation and return without accountability, that's not closeness, that's control. And control thrives when you're too busy proving your worth to notice you're being diminished. Choosing yourself in this moment is an act of trust. Trusting that your needs are valid. Trusting that consistency is not too much to ask. Trusting that you don't have to earn basic human consideration. You don't need more patience. You need alignment. And alignment begins when you stop arguing with the part of you that already knows. If this connection costs you your peace, it's already too expensive. There's a moment. Quiet, almost invisible, when you realize you're doing all the emotional labor. You're the one reaching out. You're the one explaining your feelings. You're the one holding space for their silence. And here's the truth that lands like a weight in your chest. Connection should not feel like begging. When someone ignores you, you start performing. You become more agreeable, more forgiving, more available. You convince yourself that love means flexibility, that if you just try harder, they'll finally see you. But love does not require you to disappear to be accepted. Let me say this plainly. If your presence only matters when it's convenient for them, that's not intimacy. It's access without responsibility. Ignoring is a boundary they set without your consent. And every time you step over your own needs to accommodate it, you teach people how to treat you. Not with words, but with tolerance. Choosing yourself here feels brutal because it forces you to confront a loss you didn't plan for. You didn't sign up to be ignored. You signed up to be met, to be heard, to be responded to with care. And the courage isn't in demanding more from someone who has already checked out. The courage is in stepping back and saying, I will no longer audition for a role in someone else's life. You don't withdraw to punish them. You withdraw to protect yourself. That's not shutting down. That's standing up. Let's talk about the myth that keeps you stuck. The idea that endurance equals love. That if you can just tolerate the silence long enough, it will turn into connection. That if you don't react, don't complain, don't ask, you'll somehow be rewarded with attention. But love is not a prize for suffering. When someone ignores you and you stay emotionally invested, your nervous system learns a dangerous lesson. Connection requires self-sacrifice. And once that belief settles in, you don't just accept distance, you normalize it. You start mistaking breadcrumbs for effort. You celebrate replies that should be basic. You lower the bar so far that inconsistency feels like intimacy. And I need to stop you right there, because choosing yourself isn't about walking away angrily. It's about waking up honestly. It's realizing that love should feel grounding, not destabilizing. That care should feel consistent, not conditional. That being valued should feel calm, not like a test you're constantly failing. Here's the shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, how do I get them to see me? You ask, why am I making myself invisible to stay connected? That question hurts because it exposes the cost of waiting, the cost of hoping, the cost of abandoning your own emotional truth. Choosing yourself means you stop romanticizing absence. You stop explaining away disrespect. You stop participating in dynamics that require you to betray your needs. And yes, it will feel lonely at first, but loneliness with integrity is far less damaging than connection that erases you. Here's what no one prepares you for. Choosing yourself after being ignored feels like withdrawal. Your body is used to the chase, the waiting, the small rush when they finally respond. That inconsistency creates hope, and hope is addictive. So when you stop reaching out, when you stop explaining, when you stop making yourself available, your nervous system panics, not because you made the wrong choice, but because you broke a familiar pattern. And this is where people turn back. They confuse discomfort with danger. They mistake anxiety for intuition. They assume that if it hurts, it must be wrong. But healing often feels wrong before it feels right. Let me be clear. If someone only notices you when you pull away, they didn't miss you. They missed the access. They missed the validation. They missed the control of knowing you were still waiting. And choosing yourself means you resist the urge to go back and prove your worth one last time. You don't send the follow-up message. You don't reopen the wound just to feel something familiar. You sit in the quiet. You breathe through the ache. You let the truth settle. Because self-respect is not loud. It doesn't announce itself. It simply says, I will not chase what chooses distance. This is the moment you stop confusing intensity with intimacy. You stop believing that anxiety is chemistry. You stop calling emotional neglect space. Choosing yourself here is not about them changing. It's about you returning to yourself. There's a quiet power that shows up when you stop explaining yourself to people who refuse to listen. You don't announce your boundaries. You don't argue your worth. You just change your behavior, and that's when things get real. Because when you choose yourself, the dynamic shifts. The silence that once felt unbearable starts to feel revealing. You begin to see how much of the relationship was held together by your effort, your emotional labor, your willingness to wait. And here's the hard, honest truth. Some people don't ignore you because they don't care. They ignore you because they know you'll stay. They count on your patience. They rely on your forgiveness. They assume your needs are negotiable. Choosing yourself breaks that contract. It forces you to confront a painful realization that the version of you who tolerated neglect was not weak, but hopeful, loving, open, and maybe a little too willing to believe that being needed was the same as being cherished. But growth asks for something different now. It asks you to stop proving you're worthy of response, to stop translating silence into meaning, to stop carrying the emotional weight for two people. You don't need closure from someone who couldn't show up. You don't need one last conversation to justify your pain. What you need is clarity, and clarity comes when you finally stop reaching into emptiness, expecting warmth. Choosing yourself is when you say, without bitterness or drama, I deserve relationships that don't require me to disappear. At some point, something shifts, and it's subtle, but it's irreversible. You stop taking the silence personally. You stop assuming it's a reflection of your worth. You start seeing it for what it is, a mismatch in capacity. And that's freeing. Because when you no longer internalize being ignored, you reclaim your power. You stop asking, what did I do wrong? And start asking, what do I need to feel safe, seen, and respected? This is where self-trust is rebuilt. You begin honoring the signals you once dismissed. The heaviness after reaching out, the anxiety before sending a message, the relief you feel when you don't, that relief matters. It's your body exhaling after being in a constant state of emotional vigilance. It's your nervous system realizing it doesn't have to work so hard to be chosen. And here's the truth that changes how you love going forward. Healthy connection doesn't make you doubt yourself. It doesn't leave you decoding tone or timing. It doesn't punish honesty with distance. It doesn't require you to earn responsiveness. Choosing yourself means you stop romanticizing potential and start respecting patterns. Because patterns don't lie. They show you exactly what's available and what's not. You're not closing your heart. You're refining your standards. You're learning that peace is not boring. Consistency is not dull. And being emotionally met is not asking for too much. It's the bare minimum. This is the moment you stop waiting to be chosen. Because you already chose yourself. Now comes the part that feels both terrifying and liberating. You stop making excuses for people who hurt you. Not because you're angry. Not because you've hardened. But because you finally told yourself the truth. You see how often you filled in the gaps. How you justified their absence. How you protected their behavior by minimizing your pain. And choosing yourself means you don't do that anymore. You don't rewrite the story to make it easier to stay. You don't intellectualize neglect. You don't call inconsistency being busy when it's actually emotional unavailability. This is where integrity shows up in your life. You align your actions with what you know. If someone ignores you, you stop offering them intimacy. If someone disappears, you stop leaving the door open. If someone shows you they can't meet you, you stop demanding they become someone else. And let me say this clearly, because this is where guilt creeps in. You are not cruel for choosing distance. You are not dramatic for stepping back. You are not selfish for protecting your emotional energy. You're finally responding instead of reacting. Choosing yourself here feels like loss, but it's actually release. Release from waiting. Release from explaining. Release from needing someone else to validate what you already feel. You're not walking away from love. You're walking towards self-respect. And self-respect changes who has access to you forever. Here's the final unshakable truth. Choosing yourself is the most radical act of love you can offer. Not to them, but to you. It's not loud. It doesn't demand applause. It doesn't require them to understand or notice. It simply exists as a quiet, unyielding declaration. I will not compromise my peace for someone else's neglect. When you choose yourself, you step out of the waiting room of disappointment and into your own life. You honor your feelings, you honor your time, you honor your heart, and in doing so, you teach the world exactly how you expect to be treated. This choice changes everything. The anxiety fades, the overthinking quiets. The constant questioning of your worth stops, and in the stillness, you finally hear the voice that matters most. The one that says, you are enough. You are worthy. You are deserving of love that shows up consistently without hesitation. It's not vengeance. It's not punishment. It's not bitterness. It's clarity, and clarity is freedom. So when someone ignores you, remember their silence is not your fault. Their absence is not your reflection. Their neglect is not your standard. The real power, the real victory, is choosing yourself. Because in choosing yourself, you discover something no one else can ever take away: your worth, your peace, and your unshakable capacity to be fully, unapologetically you. This is not the end of love. It's the beginning of knowing exactly what kind of love you deserve